Welcome everyone to the first Primero Data Challenge of 2025. This exciting and challenging new year that we're all faced with. It is exactly 30 minutes past the hour. We are still waiting for quite a few more colleagues to join, so we're going to give it 3 more minutes, and in 3 minutes we'll get underway. An exciting agenda for us today, so hold tight and we'll get started in a few minutes. Okay, wonderful. It is a lovely mid-afternoon here in Madrid, Spain. The sun is shining. Lots of reasons to be optimistic and excited about this year ahead. I know that it's a very challenging time for a lot of you. And I wanted to start by saying, we all feel for our sector, for this work that we're doing, and all the challenges that are being faced by organizations, our friends, our colleagues. I just wanted to start with that message of solidarity. Keep strong, help each other, support each other. We're very happy to have you here today. This is the third year that we'll be having this community come together under the under this project of the Primero Data Challenge. We had quite a few more people registered so far. Not too many have shown up. I've looked at the list of names. Some new, some old friends. You're more than welcome. You're welcome to invite others from your organization or other team members who you think might benefit from this focused conversation and this open and collaborative community that comes together to talk about how we can do more with our data for the benefit of the populations that we serve. So you're very welcome. We're excited about this year. I want to get off with an introduction of our agenda. We have a wonderful group of people joining us today, really exciting stuff. So we're going to be hearing about some very technical work that's being done by Ali, our colleague Ali. He's doing some really exciting things with Power BI dashboards. We're going to hear from our colleague Chrisana, who's working on an exciting new piece of work and a new service offering called Data Governance for Children, and that really emphasizes how data governance is central to our ability to make the most out of data and the systems that we invest in to support our programming. I'm going to give you a little bit of an update on a new service offering from the Primero team and how you might be able to take advantage of that. It's called the Menu of Value-Added Services, and we'll be launching that in the next week, actually, for the first time. Then we'll hear from Jan from our Primero team on the new key performance indicators work, the new global Primero key performance indicators, which you all contribute to. So we'd like to give you some visibility into that plan and how we're going to do a better job of telling our story to the world. Then we have Lucy Richardson joining us again. She's a disability and inclusion specialist, and she is going to tell us about our progress with the child functioning module. Exciting stuff. We have an hour and a half. We really encourage you to participate in these conversations. Put your questions in the chat. This, as you know, is a recorded webinar series. So we do publish this video and all the materials. So don't worry too much if oh, I'm seeing guests. Yeah, don't worry too much if something goes on the screen and you aren't quick enough to copy it down or get a link or whatever. All of this will be published, and we'll be putting it up on our Primero Data Challenge website. So that's the exciting agenda that we have. We have some technical, we have some very focused thematic work, we have some business process and some governance. It's a really nice mix with a really great group of people, and we're happy to have you here. So I'm going to move along quickly, just knowing that we've got quite a lot to cover in the time that we have, and we want to leave lots of time for questions. So it is always a good idea to start with just a quick explanation of what this is. I see that there are some new people in the group with us today. We've been running these for, like I said, this is the beginning of our third year, and the objectives, we have to be really clear about what this is and what this is not. Right? We want to make the most of your time. We want to make the most of your capacities and the experience that you bring. So the important thing here is this is about data usage. It's about how we responsibly and effectively use the data that we have. And we try to link this to responsibility. I'm making a shout out here to Responsible Data for Children. This is also about us building capacity as a community, right? And there are no stupid questions here. And there's open and constructive learning happening here. So that works both ways. If you come into the conversation and there are things that you really don't understand, there are lots of other people who probably don't understand them, and you're adding value for the community by raising your questions and by engaging. Then there are some of us who are just real data ninjas, and they're super talented about what they do. I'm not one of those people, but I've learned a lot from them, and they like to teach, and that's why we welcome them to the data challenge. We want to bring those experts in and give them a space to share and teach how some of these processes work. We do one webinar per quarter. The idea is they're progressive, so they build on each other. And the work Aaliyah is going to show today is a great example of that. Aaliyah is building on some work that was actually presented in an earlier data challenge. The idea is that we're supposed to focus on a specific set of problems, and it's open. The idea is it's open to anyone. If you have a good idea, if you're doing something cool and you want to share it, please bring it to us. You can write to me or to Jan. We'd love to have you on the agenda. There is a award each year for the winner. We decide this in our annual meeting at the end of the year, in the fourth quarter of the year. And this year, the winners were the team from Burkina Faso for the Power BI work that they did, led by Mamadou, our colleague Mamadou, who I don't know if he's joining us or not today, but I sure hope he is. So our goal is to do a better job of using data so that our programs can deliver better results for children and survivors of violence. That's all I'm going to say on that. I think we're all up to speed and refreshed, and we're ready to dig in to some much more technical material. So with that, Ali, I will hand it over to you. I can give you control here, or you can take control, whatever you prefer. Please introduce yourself, and then the floor is all yours.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Thank you for that intro. Can you hear me clearly first?
Loud and clear. I just gave
Very
you
good.
control, so you should be good to
Very
go.
good. Robert, I would rather actually to share from my side because I'll be doing some demonstration as well, not just
I thought,
the presentation. Yeah.
I
So I
hoped
will
you'd
start
say
by,
that. Go ahead.
yeah. So yeah, hi everyone. This is Ali Al-Babawat, Child Protection Information Management Consultant with the ICARO UNICEF Regional Office, and also the focal point for Primero in the region. So first, I'll start sharing my screen. I hope you can see it now. So yeah, I've started with a dashboard for a reason. So because we will be talking how to get a dashboard similar to this one in your instances if you find it interesting. So this dashboard we've had this since 2022 in Iraq. It proved very valuable to us since then. So it provides an automated data gathering across the country. So no need to contact partners to gather data and then sum them up and do analysis on them. It also proved useful for project planning, like interventions and gap analysis, like wherever we find a low number of services in a certain area and need for more interventions. And it also showed us uh, the actual presence of the partners. So partners usually mentioned in the service mapping that we are doing case management here and there, but the actual presence was always shown over here, like because these data were all extracted from real data in the Primero system. Another another benefit that we got from this dashboard was that it also gave a clear idea to the donors, to the project seniors, to people who do not have access to the Primero system, to governments as well, to have an overview about the work that is being done by the caseworkers and case management teams in general across the whole country. So in order to get this, we had a lot of planning. We had back and forth discussions until we agreed on all of these visuals, all of these filters, and what kind of data do we want to extract from the system. And after that, since 2022, I want to show you the experience that the work that I have to go through every time I want these data to be refreshed. So this is the only issue that currently we have with this dashboard, is that these data need to be manually refreshed every month or week or given interval. So let me take you through this real quick. So these are the steps that I used to take every time I need to refresh this dashboard. First of all, I have the data. I want them to be in the dashboard. So I would start with filtering through the CPIMS through the Primero web application. I would start filtering the cases, selecting the cases that I need, and then extracting a custom report specifying the fields of the case that I need. So I do not need all the fields. Obviously, I only selected the ones that I need. Then fetching the data, which is downloading it basically from the website, which also took some time for the server to calculate and prepare the data and then do some calculations. There are fields with multi-values that need to be resolved. There are dependencies that need to be resolved. We will get to these points in a minute. And then once the data is all pre-processed and ready to be fed to the dashboard, I had to feed it and then republish, delete the old version, old link, and republish the new one. So and repeat all of this every week or a month, depending on the interval that you need the data to be refreshed on. So this took a lot of time, took a lot of effort, and this was not the issue. The issue is that all of this needs to be done every time you need a refresh to the data. So the issues that I had, as I mentioned, it's a recurring process. It needs time and effort. It doesn't go according to data minimization, doesn't preserve data minimization, honestly, because all the data needs to be downloaded on my personal computer first. These are sensitive data. It's not a good practice to download them on my PC, and then all uploaded on the server and on the Power BI server to be published. And this whole process, since especially the pre-processing, since I'm dealing with currently in Iraq, we have more than 60,000 cases. This is a huge number of cases, a huge number of records and data to be dealt with. If I do all of these calculations for them every time, like every month or every week, this process is prone to error, prone to mistakes. And honestly, I have done some mistakes in the past. So this is my experience I wanted to show you. And also I wanted to show you the alternative way that I proposing here. So this work is built, as Robert mentioned, is driven from Mohan's work and expanded a little bit. So as I mentioned, this is where the data is in the Primero database, and this is where we want the data to be. So we have two ways of doing this. The first way, the traditional way, or the way that I used to follow, is login into the web application first, like put your domain, then .primero.org, and then as a super user, of course, so that you have access to all of the data. And then you will have to do the process in the previous slide all over again every time you need the data to be refreshed. By refreshed, I mean having new data into the dashboard. This is one way of doing it. The other way would be through the API, through over here. So we get the data not through the web application, but through the API, and then pre-process it, and then import it into the Power BI dashboard. So here, someone may be wondering, it's still the same steps. You get the data, you pre-process it, and put it in the dashboard. It's the same step, yes. But the good thing here is that all of this will be done only once. Just let me remove this. It's a mess. So all of this will be done only once. You get the data, you specify the data that you need, and then you pre-process it. We will get to the pre-processing in a moment. I'll show you what I mean by pre-processing it. And all of this will be stored in a configuration style. And then this configuration will be automatically applied every time you click refresh on the Power BI dashboard. Or you can even specify that without clicking it. You can specify like dates for refreshing it so that it will automatically refresh. So about this pre-processing steps that I mentioned, we have to get the data. I will show you in a moment how to get the data and then how to pre-process it. So if we put all of this into steps, so it will be first, we need to get the data through the API. How do we do that? And then data minimization, do some data minimization on the data. We do not need all of the data. We need only the data that will serve us into bringing valuable visuals into the dashboard. And then there's the issue of loading more than 1,000 cases, 1,000 records per fetch, per every time you fetch the data, because the Primero API only allows 1,000 case to be fetched at one go at a time. So how do we overcome that? There is also a workaround for this. And of course, this is for security and efficiency reasons. It's limited to 1,000 cases. Then how to we have driven fields, like fields that are derived from other fields. How do we resolve this? And I will give you this in examples as well. Fields with multiple values if you have used Primero, you notice that some fields accept multiple values, and those kind of fields are not easy to deal with in the Power BI dashboard. There is also the issue of data dependency. So all of this will be done in the Power Query application. So we are using two applications here, the Power Query and the Power BI dashboard. All of these blue steps will be done through the Power Query application, and then the setting up the visuals, the easy part. I would not say that like the part with the less time. It takes some time, but it's the easy part, is setting up the visuals. So let's get to the demo here. As I mentioned, this is the dashboard that we are trying to build. So we will start with the opening a new page of Power BI. So you need first to download this application, Power BI Desktop. Once you click on it, open a blank report here. And then this is the dashboard. This is where we set up the visuals. As you can see here, there are different type of visuals, but before setting up the visuals, you will need data to be fetched. You need the data to be pre-processed as well, and then fed into the dashboard, into Power BI dashboard. So how do we open the Power Query that will do that for us? So we go here to transform data. This is the Power Query application. So now I have two applications open. This is the Power BI, this is the Power Query application. So I need to get the data from the API now. How do I do that? How do I do that? I need to add a new query, a web. What is the source of my web query? It's from the web. And then I will put the link to the API over here. I have the link over here. I'll put it here. If you notice, the link of the API is usually driven from the instance, the instance link that you have. So for example, for Iraq demo, the demo version, it's demo CPIMS plus or CPIMS Iraq.primero.org, and then we put API. This is the difference. This is the different part. You put API so that it takes you to the API link. And then I will request the cases. You can request the locations and different other entities, but we need the cases for now. So I'll just press OK and see what it will fetch me. So as you can notice here, it got 180. Don't know if you can see this. It got us 198 columns and 20 rows. Now this is still, there are still some issues with this data. So first of all, I do not need all these columns. I mean, this dashboard, give you an example, this dashboard with all of its visuals, all of its pages, I needed around 35 columns, 35 fields to fill all of this. So 198 is a huge number of columns, a huge number of fields to be fetched. It basically fetches all the records of the case. So we do not need that. This is not like going according to data minimization. And plus, if I minimize the number of rows and columns, it will result in less processing power, both for the Power BI and the Primero server as well. So how do we reduce this? I mean, this table, think of this as a rectangle that needs to be trimmed both vertically and horizontally. How do you trim it horizontally? You will reduce the number of columns. I mean, I do not need all of these columns. And then we will reduce the number of rows. So how do we reduce first the number of columns? We go over here. This is the query that I just created. Right click on it, go to Advanced Editor. It will show you the code that's being applied to fetch all of those data. You can see too many columns fetched there. You do not have to worry about this. We will change only something here. As you can see here, this is the link that I provided, the API link. So what I need to do here, I will put a question mark. The question mark indicates that this query will have some specifications. It's not a general query. After the question mark, you put your specifications. So one of the specifications that I need to put here is to specify the fields that I need. So how do I do that? I will write the word fields equal and then put the name of the fields that I need, one by one, separated by a comma. So for example, I need first the age of the children, of the cases. I need sex, for example. So you may be wondering, how do I get these names? These are the names of the columns in the database. They are not the title of the field. So for example, if I go to a case over here, if I open any case, this, for example, if I need this field, which is called current agency ID or whatever other field, this is not the name of the field. This is the title of the field. If you want the name of the field, the name as in the database, system administrators know this step. You should go to forms, settings, forms, open the form that that field exists in, go to, for example, basic identity, go to fields. So these are the fields that I have. For example, I need the case ID. Click on the case ID. It will give you over here the database name for that field. So the case ID, this is the title of the field. This is the database name of the field. As you can notice, database field names usually do not accept spaces. They only take underscores instead of spaces. So case ID is the name of the case underscore ID underscore display is the name of the case ID field in the database. So I need to copy that. You need to specify what fields do you need, get the database name for them. So I copied one here. Go back here, specify case ID. I need the case ID as well. And then you put whatever other fields you need. You may take some time gathering all of those names, but it will be only once. So I click done over here. You'll notice nothing has changed because there are some query steps that are by default done. I need to remove all this. So I'll go from the start, click on the list, expand it. These are like basic steps in order to turn the result of the query into a table. So this is the final table that I get. This is the field that these are the fields that I requested: age, sex, case ID. What about these three fields? These are brought by default. Is one of them, it says the last time this case was updated. This is the enabled, whether this case is enabled or not, and the row ID for the case. These are brought by default. So you do not have to worry about this. So now I have minimized the number of rows that I need, the number of fields that I need. If you notice that the query only brought me 20 records. So by default, the query brings up to 20 records. If you want more than this, you will need to specify that as well. So we go back to the advanced editor. As you can notice, the code is much less now. We go back here and add another specification. So when you have to add another specification, you have to add the and sign. By the way, this is called M language or mashup language. This is a programming language. So you put the and sign, indicating that I have other specifications that I need to specify. Which now what are we trying to do here? We're trying to load more than 20 records. How do we do that? There is a reserved word for that as well. It says number of records per pitch. You can call it like that. So the word actually is per, and then you put equal. You specify the number of records that you need this query to fetch. And as I mentioned, the API is limited to 1,000 records per query. So you can only bring up till 1000 records. So click done again. Notice that it brings more records. If you go to the end, to the last record, it's 590. Why did it didn't bring 1000? Because in the demo version, we only have this number of cases. So if you try it in a production version, you will find more data fetched up until 1000. Now, this leaves us with this second issue. Now we got the data. We done data minimization in terms of columns, not rows yet. Now we have this issue, the issue of loading more than 1000 cases. But first, let's minimize the data even more, like in terms of records as well. If you want to do that, like for example, I do not need the data of 2022 to be included in this dashboard, or 2023 as well. So I want this dashboard to include only the data of 2024 and 25. So I will have to specify that as well. That will minimize the number of records, so it will trim the rectangle vertically. So again, I will put the and sign because I'm specifying something else. I will say registration. What is the field that indicates when this case was registered? It's the registration or interview date. For our instance, in another instance, it may be called something else. So registration underscore date. So for dates, you need to use these brackets. You specify whether it's data from or date to. You can use both as an interval, or you can leave the interval open. It's also okay. So I will only specify the from date. So I will tell it, like, for example, for 2024, 1st of January. And that's it. This will bring only the cases that were registered after the 1st of January 2024. If I refresh it, it will bring only 118 cases. If I'm done, let's say we are done, you click close and apply, and you'll notice that the data appeared over here in a moment. See, these are the data that we have currently. These are the columns. So now I can put these columns into visuals and then design my Power BI dashboard. But there are a couple of more steps that I wanted to show you. So first, how do we load more than 1000 cases? So for example, in Iraq for 2024 and 25, we have around 24,000 cases. And this is more than 1000, obviously. So we will have to load all of those cases as in one go. How do we do that? Let's go back here. I want to explain something to you first. So since it's not possible to load more than 1000 cases per query, we will have to do multiple queries. So say here we have 17K cases, 17,000 cases. This is all in a data set in the Primero database. We cannot fetch it in one go, so we have to put it into smaller pieces. Each piece containing no more than 1K. So I'm terrible at going. So we will have to break it down into smaller pieces, with each piece not having more than 1000 cases. So how many pieces do we need? It will be 17 pieces, since we have 17K. If it's 17 plus, then it will be 18 pieces. And then these pieces will be transferred and recombined into one data set through Power Query. I will show you how to do that in a moment. But first, I need to know these pieces are called pages. Okay. Yes, I got it. Okay, so pages. These pieces are called pages because we will see this name in a moment. So this data set will be broken down into smaller pieces, with each piece having no more than 1000 cases, and then these pieces will be transferred Once they reach Power Query, we will have to recombine them into one piece of data, one data set, and then feed it to the Power BI dashboard. How do we do that? I preferred, if you have watched Mohan's tutorial, he used a list, but I prefer to use code for it. So we go back to the Power Query from here. This is the query that we had. And this is the code that does that for us. I spent a couple of days on this code, but you will only have to copy and paste it. You don't even need to understand it, although I will explain it in a moment. So say we have 17,000 cases. We will have, and we can fit 1,000 per query. So one way to do it would be, we can copy this line of code, which fetches the data, paste it 17 times. It has too many fields. That's why it's so long. It's only the fields. And you can even remove this. A moment. You can even remove this as the time. You don't have to specify the time as well. So we have the per parameter, and you notice we have added also the page parameter. So if you go back here, let me cancel this actually. Let's go to the original code. So the last thing we did, we added the registration date. If you want to specify, in our example where we have 17,000 cases, we will have to specify which page do we need to bring in each query. So in the first query, the first 1,000, I will also put an and sign and specify the page. Which page do I need? If I put number 1, it will fetch the first 1,000. If I put number 2, it will fetch the second 1,000. And in our case, we have 17,000. So one way of doing this, we can copy and paste this line, all of it. We can and put it 17 times, and then put 1, 2, 3 until 17 for each line. This is of course not practical. Another way of doing it would be through creating a loop. So how to create a loop in the M language is that you specify a list, you open a list, you give it the parameters. I mean, this part requires, in order to fully understand it, requires you to have like basic computer programming background. But if you do not understand it, as I mentioned, you will only end up copying and pasting it. But so this part, as I mentioned, it loops 17 times until it reaches the final 1,000. But an even better way of doing this, say, for example, I do not know the number of cases that I have. I'm not sure if it's 17,000. Or in another case, next month we will have another 1,000. Next year we will have another 5,000, say, for example. So it would be better to prepare a dynamic loop, a loop that will search the database until there is no more data to fetch, then it will break, instead of giving it a specific number of rounds. So this is what I did exactly. So first we specify this variable, we set it to 1. Then we specify another variable which equals to fetch page. What does fetch page mean? It's a function that fetches the data for us. For which page, we specify the page each time through giving it this variable. So for the first round, current page is 1. For the second round, it will be incremented by 1, so it will be 2. The second round will be 3, and so on and so forth until there is no more data. When the data, the list count, the count of the cases is greater than 0, then continue, go for another round. Whenever it's equal to 0, this loop will break and it will end up over here. Once it ended up over here, we know that all the data are in this list. all as list items. After that, we will have to combine all of these list items into one list and then convert the whole list into a table expanded in the Power Query to show like this. I don't know if I saved it. No, I didn't. So as you can see, it will bring, let's do this from the beginning again. So it has two lists. We have all the combined data, and then these are the columns that did catch plus. These are the columns that I specified. These are the columns that I need for this dashboard. You may need more other columns, so you will have to change this line only. So you put, if you wanted to adapt this, of course, you will put the domain name of your instance and then specify the fields that you need for your dashboard. And the rest you can leave it the same. So even if you do not understand, it's also okay. So after we fetch that, we click close and apply. The data will refresh. It will take longer because we requested more records here. And if you go back to the steps, so now we've loaded more than 1,000 cases. And even if next year we end up having more thousands of cases, this code will still work. So there are some issues that you will be facing here, which one of them would be the derived fields, like fields that are based on calculations. Let's go back again here. I want to show you something else. So for example, in the data set that we fetched here, we have the registration date. This is the registration date. And then we have the closure date, or the date where the case was closed. So if, for example, if I want to calculate the number of days it took the caseworkers from case registration till case closure, put that in days or in months, because it would be like valuable for me as an M&E or as supervisor to see what's the average number of days that caseworkers are taking to handle a case. So if I want to put that column in here, I will have to put it as a column in here. How do we do that? Let's go back a step here. So I remove the column so we can add it again. You go to add columns and then add a custom column. It's something similar to formulas in Excel. So you have here a duration. There's a function called duration in days. This duration in days takes two dates and subtracts them from each other and give you the result in days. So what are the days that we are looking for? We will subtract the closure, the registration from the closure. So first select the closure and then minus the registration. You can write them down or select them from here. So this is the formula that we need. It will give us the number in days, but it will have one issue here. It will show all of them in error. Why is that? If we go back to it again, because it shows, let me show you the error it shows. It says that the operator is trying to subtract two texts from each other. So a computer programmer knows that every value comes with a data type. The data type of these two values is text, and you cannot subtract two texts from each other. You need to convert them into dates first. So in order to do that, you can change the type of the column or write it down over here. Date to from dot from, and then put the brackets. Do it for both fields. From another bracket and another bracket over here will give you the number of days that took each case. So you can calculate all of this and put the average, or you can just monitor case by case as well. It depends on your need. So this is one way of getting derived fields. You may end up needing more fields with other calculations. I just wanted you to know how to add the calculations. It doesn't have to be a subtraction. There are many functions over here that you can use. Another point to consider, or another issue that you will be facing, is fields with multiple values. So if you have used the CPI mesh system, you'll notice that some fields can take more than one value. So for example, if you go to protection concerns, one popular field would be the protection concerns. Protection concerns can take up to like 10 or even more values. So those values, usually when Power Query brings them, it brings them as lists. And lists cannot be put into visuals. It's hard to do that. So we'll have to uh, expand those lists. So let's see the column first, protection concerns. This is the column, as you can notice here. It only includes lists. If you click on each one of them, it will break the list down here, over here. So for this case, we have these protection concerns. If we select another case, it will bring other protection concerns. So how do we expand these? We will have to put a new query over here, a blank query. This query will not bring any data from the Primero database. Rather, it will bring its data from the other query. So the source of this query will be the previous query. There's a simple code that does that as well. You'll have to right-click on it, go to Advanced Editor to open the code for it, and then specify the source for it. What is the source for this query? It will be the other query, which is called cases. And then it will create a new table, take only the case ID, because we need the case ID. We will have to know which protection concern is related to which case, and then also take the protection concerns column. So it takes only 2 columns from here. Oh, some reference. Yeah, I think I made a mistake in the references. So case display, cases, sources. Let me show it to you in another version over here. So this is what you will end up with. So it got two columns from which it got 2 columns from the cases query. So it did not fetch anything from the server. Once we have these columns, as you can notice, they are still lists. You click on each one of them, it will give you multiple values. So we need to expand this by clicking over here. Any column with lists has this button over it. So if you click on that, it will give you the option of expanding it into rows. And this is what we need actually. So we expand it into rows, and then we click close and apply. The protection concerns will be added over. One more thing to do here, one simple thing, is we need to make sure that the relationship was also added, so that this new query, which is the PC, is related to the first query. This is usually done automatically by the Power BI, but just make sure if it did not happen, just drag and drop the case ID into the case ID over here, showing the Power Query that these 2 case IDs are foreign and primary keys. So this,
Ali, I'm going to
yeah.
have to just give you a time warning because we are almost halfway through. So we just have to speed up a little bit. Thanks.
Yeah, so there is one step, which is data dependency, which is more related to the locations. Because locations, once you fetch the data, it will give you the locations in IDs. So as you can notice here, it doesn't give you the actual location, rather it gives you the ID of the location. So you'll have to fetch the locations table as well. And this is the code for it. I will put all of this code in, try to put it all in one document so that you can just copy and paste it. And then also bring the relationship. Once you are done, you will end up having all of these. These are the fields that I specified. In the case, this is the locations table that I had to fetch because the cases only include the IDs of the locations, and then this is the protection concerns. Any of these columns you want to put a visual for, just drag and drop this visual, any visual that you need, and then put, for example, let's say we need to put for status, we'll put the status in the x-axis and then put the case ID into the y-axis, and it will give you a chart. Any chart you click, it will be linked to all of the other charts. You can put a map as well. So this is the easy part where you set up the visuals. So you got the data, you overpassed the issues that you will be facing. The easy part would be setting up the visuals. So in order, if you want to adapt this is my final slide, Robert. You will need to put some hours into this. Basically, you will end up only copying and pasting the code that I explained. You will have to follow maybe this recording as well. And then you will have to have a Power BI Pro license in order to be able to publish your Power BI as a web link, which is $10 a month, I think. And as far as my knowledge goes, all UNICEF country offices, Save the Children, and I think IRC as well, they all have pro licenses in their country offices. You should ask the IT department. If they have that permission, they can give it to you. Otherwise, I will be putting all of this into one document for you for easy adaptation. Meanwhile, if you are interested in this, send me an email. I'd be happy to help you with it. Yeah, that's it. And thank you for listening. Any questions, please?
Wonderful, man. You are a natural teacher. I don't know if everybody knows this about Ali, but he's actually a professor. If you couldn't already tell from that explanation, taking very technical things and making them accessible to lots of people. That's the idea here. I did see that Lama asked a question about using a web source or extracting cases to Excel. I think you answered that question, Lama, but I think Ali answered that question,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of the web source and Excel extraction are two different types of sources for the web for the Power BI. I used to use the Excel extraction, so I extracted all the data from the Primero system into an Excel file, pre-process it every time I wanted the dashboard to be refreshed. But now we are trying to use the web source, which would require work in the first time only, and then so on and so forth. It will be done automatically. Robert, you are muted.
Yeah. Any other questions for Ali? I know this is a lot of stuff to ingest, but I think his message is very clear. You do this work up front, and you don't have to go back and do it all the time.
Exactly.
Ali, one thing that I wanted to ask you was, is there a way to set the interval or I would say the periodicity, like how frequently
Yeah,
this queries run?
yeah, I got this. So, Robert, yeah, you can still see my screen. So once you finish setting up all the visuals, so for example, you finished and you ended up with this, you will have to save it, go to the Power BI web application. There is a place you will log in with the same credentials. You will go to the workspace, put your dashboard over here, dashboard file over here, then click on share. But since I do not have that permission, although I can request it from our UNICEF colleagues, and probably they will give it to me. I think this is the way for all UNICEF colleagues here. So if you have this permission, the pro permission, you will see a field here to specify what is the frequency that you want this dashboard to be refreshed. You can set it for daily live, you can set it even live, but it will refresh every time you open it. And you can set it weekly, monthly, based on your need. You are muted again.
I'm doing that automatically. That's super clear. We are pressed for time, but I really appreciate you doing all this work for us, Ali. Let's make sure that people are coming back. They know where to find this video. They know how to share this video. We reached more than 700 people so far with the Primero Data Challenge, and at least some of those folks out there are using these materials to build their own skills and to improve data usage for their implementation. So great work. I appreciate very much, Ali, all the time you put into this. I am going to take back the control of the slides and move along in our agenda because we still have quite a lot to cover. And the next presentation is going to be with Jan. So let me get this up for you, Jan. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. Excuse me. Jan, are you ready?
Yes. Hi. Hi, everyone. While the slides are just coming up, so I think you've probably actually heard me talk about this over the last year, is that we really wanted to improve how we're doing KPI monitoring of each of your implementations. The main thing that I really wanted to talk you guys through is what type of a story that we're getting when we're asking for this information. So actually, Robert, this is Chrisana's, so I'll get you to.
Oh, I skipped ahead in the agenda. I'm sorry. I'm going to go to you now, Jan.
I'll be quick, Chrisana. So, um, basically, what you're seeing on the screen is a Power BI visualization of the data that you typically are sharing back with us, and we create a dashboard. Next slide, please. And we're also trying to create some sort of a tracking of all of the implementations that are currently live, whether they're CP-IMS, GBV-IMS, or MRM-IMS, plus and also what is in the queue for the next year. So that's the gray that you're seeing on this infogram map. But the thing I wanted to ask you, and I realize that everybody's mics are muted and it may be a little bit short on time, is what type of story is this map telling us? It tells us information about the implementations, it tells us the module, it tells us what's upcoming, but that might just be it. And what information does it not tell us? And that's what we wanted to develop further with our KPIs that we are currently developing. Next slide, please. Actually, we'll skip to the next one. There we go. So it's important because the first thing is, which I want to be very clear about, is the Primero team does not have access to your data. We do not go into any sites and fetch information for us to be able to understand what's going on in your programs. Your programs are managed by your teams, and the Primero team is very much external to that process. And especially when we have tier ones, which are partners that are using the open source to implement Primero, or tier fours, where production sites are locally hosted, we definitely do not know what's going on with those implementations because we don't have any sort of we're not providing really any direct support to those sites. So the idea of having KPIs is we wanted to have visibility on the scale and the pulse of the program. So by soliciting this information from system administrators, then we can see how is the program growing. In these KPIs, we're also asking, how are you liking the system? What types of problems are you having? So we're soliciting feedback and support needs that you may have. And sometimes we're asking about what are the different features you want. And so we can help put this into our backlog. We want to understand how users are feeling, how they're supported. And I think the fundamental premise of Primero is we're working in lockstep with social workers and frontline workers and ensuring that the system is being agile to the ways that they're working. The other thing that comes out of these KPIs is that we just have feedback on what we need to improve on. And that's what we are working on the Primero team constantly, is improving the product to make it fit for purpose. But the biggest thing that helps us fundamentally on the Primero team is the subscription and the business model. In 3 or 4 years ago, I guess, when we started this subscription model for the Primero subscriptions, it was at 9,600. Then it went down to 9,100. Last year, it was 8,850, and now we're reducing it another $500 almost, which you're going to get those statements next week from Robert. And that's the whole reason that we're able to drive these costs down, is because we have an idea of what's happening with those implementations. How are they scaling? What's the utilization? How many new implementations do we have? So it really helps us make sure that we're reducing costs on our business model, and that comes down to all of you in your programs. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, many of you on this call are actually system administrators. You typically get an email from me, which is a web form that says, how many users do you have? How many cases are open and closed, etc. Moving forward, we wanted to embed this into the system to make this super easy for system administrators so they don't have to complete those forms and share them back with me. So it includes all of this information that is just pulled directly from the instance itself, and then it can just be emailed. So next slide, please. It looks like this. Basically, there's going to be a new tab in the system settings, which is called usage reports. And all you'll do is in step 1, click on export. Step 2, select the dates of the quarter that you're sharing with us. Step 3 is go into the exports page. Step 4 is actually find the export that you're looking for. And then next slide, please. And then step 5 is you'll generate a spreadsheet that looks something like this. And it'll tell you the website address, the start and end dates of what information that you're pulling, the quarter, the total number of agencies, which modules are implemented on your instance, as well as the total users by agency, new, disabled, and any new within this quarter. So it's also really exciting because we have now put together a consolidation tool. So once you send this to us, we can automatically use this Python script to consolidate it and create these visualizations and not have to do this manually quarter after quarter. And then we can also have more insights. So the idea to see, like, maybe we have globally the most users at Save the Children or at IRC. We can see how utilization is globally and share this also with our executive management teams to see how they can also best support us and how our programs are all moving along. So with that said, that's the end of my presentation, and just wondered if anyone had any questions. And while those questions are coming in, I'll also say this is supposed to be coming out not next release, but the release after. We've had a lot of back and forth with the code, making it, refining it. And so an instruction also will be shared out with the system administrators on how to generate these reports. Great. I'm glad you are all happy with this. Lots of claps. So thanks so much.
That's great, Jen. This is going to be a game changer for us because you are doing a lot of really important work, and we need that work to be reflected at a global level as well as at a country and regional level. I saw a hand up. I think it was Kay. If you want to if you want to come on in.
You can't. I can't actually.
Okay.
So if you have any questions, you'll have to put them either in the Q&A or in the chat.
Okay, while we're waiting for that, I am going to apologize profusely to Chrisana because I got my order wrong and I jumped right over the Data Governance for Children presentation, which I'm very excited about. And we are running quite late, so let's keep questions coming in the chat. We'll try to answer them in the chat. I would love to. I'd like to hand the mic over now to Krisanna. So Krisanna, if you're with us, it's over to you.
Sure, yeah, thank you, Rob. I'll try to do this relatively brief. Hello, everyone. My name is Krisanna. I work as a program officer at UNICEF headquarters in the Division for Data Analytics, Planning and Monitoring, and specifically in the Data Governance Unit. I'm super glad to have this opportunity here to briefly present you a new initiative that I have been working on these past few months with Robert on data governance for children in Primero. And I hope I will be able to give you a useful first impression on how we could potentially work together on like your specific instances of Primero. Next slide, please. So just very briefly, I'll give you a little bit of context, then I'll briefly explain the Data Governance Fit for Children program, and then also present you two short examples of how this could potentially look like to make it a bit more practical for you. And we'll then briefly talk on benefits of adopting responsible data handling practices and costs of not doing so. And then end by explaining you a little bit what this additional service offering is that we would like to provide through the subscription model. Next slide, please. So Primero, as you all know, is an incredibly powerful tool. It helps child protection agencies manage large volumes of very sensitive data. But to truly maximize its potential, we need to ensure that this data is handled responsibly and securely, and is really used to drive impact. So as a digital public good, Primero is designed to bring multiple organizations onto a shared platform, making collaboration easier and improving service delivery and just coordination among actors. But now imagine a system where different partners collect, store, and share data without clear rules, roles, procedures. What would happen? You get data breaches, inconsistent practices that can lead to inconsistent data quality, inefficiencies, and in the worst case, loss of trust in the system or even harm to children. If partners don't trust the system, they will not use it, and that means less effective child protection services. And this is why we need effective data governance that is fit for children to ensure that Primero doesn't just function, but that it really thrives. And this is also where data governance fit for children comes in. In an age of next slide, please. In an age of increasingly ubiquitous technology, our vision is really that every child across the globe is protected from the risks of a growing digital world, but also empowered through the use of data and data technologies to promote their rights and align with their preferences and uplift their opportunities in life. Child protection work relies heavily on data. Data tells us who child is, what support they need, and how we coordinate services effectively. So data can really be incredibly useful in service provision, but managing this kind of sensitive information also comes with risks, right? If it's mismanaged or shared inappropriately, it can put children in harm's way instead of actually protecting them. So at the same time, if data isn't available when it's needed, children may miss out on critical services. And therefore, the challenge is finding this balance and assessing trade-offs between protecting privacy and ensuring that the right people can access the right data at the right time. It is important to note that DG4C is not any sort of compliance instrument. It's really about making data work better, improving efficiency, enhancing trust in services and service providers, and strengthening decision-making in child protection through high-quality, reliable, and up-to-date data. DG4C Data Governance for Children relies on a set of principles which guide our work. Yeah, and as I said, it's not compliance instruments, it's really a principles-led approach. All of this might seem a little bit abstract, so I'll briefly try to explain this through 2 examples. Next slide, please. In the first scenario, we have a country's government that expresses interest in fully taking over the management of Primero from a humanitarian or a development organization, while before the government was just one of several partners. The government's practices on child rights might not always align with UNICEF, which is one of our major challenges, right, when giving over a full system and all the data that it contains. Very often, there is no clear ownership transition plan for data governance, and unless very clear data governance has been implemented at the country or at the implementation instance level before, different organizations might have been using their own governance rules, which also creates or can create inconsistencies across the instance. The government may lack a defined framework for data security, retention policies, and access controls, which for us is difficult as it's not really an easy conversation to have with our government partners, because in some way, by saying that, we say without their practices, right? In extreme cases, governmental entities could potentially misuse data to identify children pertaining to a specific group, for example, migrant children, without an official status in a country, and decide to detain them based on that data that is in Primero. So how can DG4C or a DG4C approach help in this type of scenario? Is by really anchoring the discussion with our government partners in principles, instead of making it about who controls the data, who owns the data. It's to help really establish a structured transition plan with a very clearly defined purpose specification for each data point, for different roles, responsibilities, and accountability mechanisms. It can also frame responsible data governance as a long-term investment in building trust and system resilience, as well as, of course, through that also very effective child protection. And adopting a DG4C approach would also help to ensure that the government really inherits a sustainable and secure system with well-defined access permissions and data sharing policies. Next slide, please. In this next scenario, key stakeholders might notice over time that there are gaps, inefficiencies, and errors in the data that impact service delivery and also reporting, for example. And through that, of course, decision-making based on the data. So different organizations and caseworkers using Primero input data in different ways, maybe not, but this is one of the risks, which could lead to inconsistencies, missing information, and just plain errors, which would make it hard to track cases accurately. So one of the reasons for that could be that some caseworkers skip certain data fields, leading to incomplete case records, while others input data in different formats. M&D staff or data analysts might struggle to generate accurate statistics and reports. They might also realize that key indicators cannot be trusted due to poor data quality. And in really bad cases, there could also be delays in referral or follow-ups for children due to unclear case histories or duplications. And so when children move across service providers, caseworkers could really struggle to understand past interventions because the information is missing or unclear or just wrong. In this case, a DG4C approach would help you really standardize data entry protocols and formulate data standards as well, including also training, of course, for caseworkers or anyone else working directly with the data to make sure that it's really complete, structured, and reliable. An important point here also is purpose specification needs to be clear also in the interest of data minimization. What is the data really used for, and what are the impact paths that we are seeing by gathering this data outside of case management, of course. So this leads me to present to you the investment rationale, basically, on benefits of adopting responsible data handling practices and costs of not doing so. Yes, thanks, that's the right slide. So next slide, please. The benefits, I will go through a bit quickly here in the interest of time. The benefits include, of course, to protecting children's rights, especially in this environment of very sensitive data, including children's privacy, which is a CRC right, but also access to services, of course. Using Primero Data can also be to promote rights, right? Really using the data to identify gaps, for example, and improve service delivery based on that data. It also helps responsible practices help building trust in institutions by using a secure system. And it helps improve collaboration and coordination by reducing duplication and ensuring responsible data sharing, especially with an integrated platform such as Primero. This is even more important. Then improved data governance will also lead to higher data quality and reliability to really support evidence-based decision-making for children. Can also help us to mitigate risks and map them out from the beginning and really understand how can we prevent, for example, costly data breaches and legal risks, but also operational efficiencies that can be improved. For example, if a case where care has to collect less data, then they also spend less time on bureaucracy and have more time to spend really for the child. Then, as I have mentioned already, really facilitate data sharing by having clear and responsible rules. And of course, promoting accountability and the use of the data for advocacy and fundraising, which I'm sure most of you already do anyway. So here, the key takeaway is that without responsible data governance, digital investments in child protection really lose value and effectiveness over time. Next slide. So on the opposite side of costs, as you can imagine, we have a lot of the opposite of what I've just explained. We have children's rights that might be violated, poor data governance leading to inefficiencies, security risks, both in terms of rights, but also in terms of reputation for the organization, then an increased risk of data breaches, which has legal and financial consequences. Missed funding opportunities due to a loss of trust as well, in case of breaches, for example. Expensive recovery efforts, for example, if you're sharing an instance with different organizations and they might jump off, right? You have higher costs in that case, like the costs of each organization increase. And of course, there could be service disruption for children if Primero isn't working properly because it needs to be, if there have been breaches that might need to be addressed. So here, yeah, the bottom line is that neglecting data governance is not just a security risk, it's also a barrier to effective child protection. Next slide, please. So to address these costs, but also really harvest the benefits of data governance from the child rights lens, we have been thinking of a new way of working together between our team, the Data Governance Fit for Children team and the Primero team, and to see how can we offer our services to the Primero community. And we have been thinking of a service offering through a business model. Next slide, please. So the idea is quite simple. Instead of a one-size-fits-all approach, organizations can kind of pick and choose a little bit the level of support that they need, at least now at the beginning. As I've said, this is a new offering, so we still need to work out some of the details, but that makes it also very customizable for you and your partners. Some of you may be just starting out and need help embedding responsible practices from the beginning, but I think many of you have already implemented Primero, but need to evaluate and improve maybe your data management and governance processes. And DG4C services are really designed to meet you wherever you are in the process. One of the key advantages of this model is that it's scalable. It works for small pilots, for national rollout, or multi-agency collaborations. And because organizations only pay for what they need, it will also remain cost effective for you. So for now, we have been thinking of 2 packages, a rollout package for those who are just thinking of adopting Primero, and then an assessment package designed for those who are already implementing the platform in your country context. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'll quickly show you the assessment package, which is on the next slide. So data governance is not something that, of course, in the ideal case, it would be something that is thought of and thought through and implemented from the get-go, but it also needs regular evaluation and improvements, and it's never too late to really start implementing responsible practices here. And the assessment package that we have put together really is designed to help organizations identify gaps, strengthen accountability, and enhance the system's performance. Here you have a depiction of what he thought could be interesting to including, getting together with your stakeholders, analyzing the context and the context in which you use the system, the type of data, and how it is used and collected, and what stakeholders are involved, and so on. And we included 2 tools that you might be aware of or might not be, which is the 22 questions audit tool, which is a responsible data for children tool that some of you might know. Robert has mentioned the initiative at the beginning, which is basically a checklist to assess data governance gaps and inconsistencies. You can also access the tool online. And we also considered useful including a studio methodology workshop, which is a collaborative session to really identify roadblocks and develop and co-create practical solutions that are tailored to local contexts and needs. So the result of this would be a comprehensive evaluation of your data governance practices, identification of roadblocks and opportunities, and also clearly defined roles and accountabilities based on the assessment. And then, of course, some action planning and the roadmap to really implement these recommendations that come out of the assessment. Next slide, please. Just to briefly wrap up, investing in responsible data governance isn't just about compliance, as I've said earlier. It's really about ensuring that Primero CPIMS Plus, but also other modules remain a trusted, effective, and sustainable tool for child protection. By embedding DG4C principles and practices, we can turn data into a powerful force for good by safeguarding children's rights while really maximizing the impact, efficiency, and sustainability of Primero through data. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, please reach out if you're interested in working with us to really strengthen your data governance and your data practices overall, and ensure that child protection data is really used responsibly and effectively in your specific country context. Thanks.
Thanks very much, This has been very illuminating. I've been very impressed with Chrisana's work on this. We get so many questions from the field about situations that compromise lots and lots of work, years of work, and building trust and building a Primero implementation with many partners, and then the ground shifts underneath that implementation, and governance of data gets stressed. So this is an important offering that we're putting out there. I'm going to ask Jan to throw the link for the value-added services menu into the chat there that also has information about how this service is going to be offered. And please put any questions you have for Chrisana in the chat. Thank you very much for taking the time today, Chrisana. We're going to move to our last session. We're going to skip over the menu. We'll just share that document with you and circulate it when we circulate the notes for the meeting. But I am going to now ask for Lucy to join us, because we really want to hear her update on the child functioning module. Lucy, if you're there, I'm going to hand the control over to you so you can manage the slides yourself, and I will let you take over. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So I know we're low on time, so I'll make sure I move through quickly, but we might be a few minutes over, and I hope you can stay for the few extra minutes to hear about what we're doing in Timor Leste with this pilot. So to start with, what is the CFM? What is the child functioning module? And some of you have heard of it before, especially if you've seen one of my presentations before. And the CFM is a statistical tool. It's designed to help estimate disability prevalence in a given population. And it was designed and developed by UNICEF and the Washington Group on Disability Statistics, and intended for use in like census and national household surveys. And it's based on an understanding of disability as the interaction between a person's functional difficulties, so from impairments or problems in the body's, mind's functioning, and an unaccommodating environment, so one that has barriers that prevent the person's participation. So with that understanding, the CFM asks questions about any functional difficulties a child may have across different domains, such as seeing, communication or comprehension, controlling behavior, or mobility. On the slide here is a few of those examples represented there. And then the response options are offered on a scale going from no difficulty through to moderate to a lot of difficulty. And that's just to reflect the reality of functional difficulties existing on a continuum from very mild to very severe, rather than being a black and white yes or no kind of thing. So the CFM really focuses on the presence and extent of functional difficulties rather than on causes, like a medical condition, like what's the diagnosis, something like that. And two common questions I get: why don't we use the word disability? It's because of some of the stigma and bias around disability, cultural and contextual differences in understanding what disability means. And also that having this functional approach is really a more accurate way of describing the daily experiences of children. So how does the CFM fit into Primero? So what we did is we took the questions from the CFM and turned it into the child functioning subform. And it's exactly the same content as the CFM. It is the same questions, the same answers. It is just presented in a format that suits Primero better. So when it is live across the board, it will be appearing in the list of Primero subforms under the title Child Functioning. So it's got a streamlined appearance, it's got a user-friendly operation, and that was to address some of the challenges identified in trying to use the CFM as it was written for census purposes, because it didn't really work for our Primero users. It's got very clear instructions for the user to simply read out the questions exactly as written. On the slide here, I've got a little screenshot of what the menu looks like. It's a drop-down style menu where you can select your response. And the form uses individual sections. So for each of those difficulties in functioning areas like vision, hearing, mobility, each one has its own section. And so the user only sees one section at a time. It's a lot less overwhelming. And we use skip logic, so only relevant questions appear. And the subform should really be thought of as information collection. It's about data. And so we can use the information collected for general data purposes, but also for casework. So to start piloting this, of course, we looked at a review of past experiences, trying to include the CFM as is, really had a kind of minimal uptake, and we got a lot of feedback, that people were seeing it as complex or overwhelming or hard to use, takes too long to complete. We also noticed that there was a lot of feedback about their perceptions of what the CFM was, thinking of it as something for disability experts or health professionals, thinking that you needed to diagnose a child or make a formal categorization of a child, or even that you only did this if you already knew if the child had a disability. So when we were getting feedback, we asked broadly about CFM as a whole and also targeted about specific aspects. So that was some of the information we got back from that. We also noticed that for some users, there wasn't a lot of awareness of what disability is, including, this functioning approach. And that was really affecting their willingness to engage with the CFM. So to start developing the pilot, we looked at that feedback. We started looking at possible pilot countries, so looking at implementations in different countries and cross-referencing that with the data that we had on whether they were doing disability inclusion work already, whether they had that capacity in the country, and then started working on the development of supporting materials, which is what's underway right now. So bringing in all of that feedback that we got to develop things like a rollout guidance, a frequently asked questions document, and a user guide. And as well as the training that goes to the eventual end user. And what's really important here is the multi-level collaboration and co-creation. So we have at UNICEF headquarters here. So myself, I am a disability inclusive child protection specialist. We have the Primero team. We also have our colleagues in our UNICEF regional offices and in the country offices. And now for the result that we want to see from the pilot, remember, it's about data collection. It's about getting that information. And then the next step is what we do with it. So for the general data purposes, okay, we can estimate the disability prevalence in the population group. So in that Primero instance, you can use it for your reporting, like reports to donors, for UNICEF colleagues in CSI reporting. It also informs your service design and delivery, especially when you have other data about the population group, looking at patterns of program participation, identifying potential exclusion. And very importantly, it gives reliable, comparable disability data. These questions have been tested every which way you can think of. It was developed by, very competent experts. There's a lot of input into this. So this is giving us good data. It addresses the lack of data on children with disabilities. And then very importantly for our users, it empowers our caseworker for their planning and implementing of the casework. So they now have more information about that child that they can use to inform their work. And then that's going to help them, of course, reach more children with disabilities in their casework. They would likely use the results of completing this form maybe to flag that maybe this child needs a referral to a specialist service, maybe they need further assessment, maybe we need more accessibility measures in our work. So finally, I'll just go to my short slide on Timor Leste. So that's where we're starting off our initial pilot. And some of the things that factored into this decision is, firstly, it's a small country, small scale, much easier for us to be working with. They already have their Primero training done. This photo on the slide is from Primero training of trainer sessions last year. They have child protection workers across 12 municipalities and 1 enclave. And there is a strategic strengthening of the child protection system and of the workforce. So the government's trying to professionalise social work and UNICEF supporting that. The case management is mandated to child protection officers, and the system also has administrative and village level workers. So there's already this strategic work on strengthening the system happening there. The country also has a lot of national priorities on disability inclusion. So they became party to the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2023. They're also putting the CFM itself international surveys this year, like the census, the DHS, etc. And the government's investing in disability inclusion in other areas as well, like education and screening. Very important for us is that our UNICEF country office has strong buy-in. So they're supporting the caseworkers and use of Primero. So it's very important to have the buy-in and doing the daily work, okay, with colleagues. They're very engaged on Primero and interested in disability inclusion. So they have that, enthusiasm and engagement there, which is very important. Now, of course, adding to the support coming from headquarters, from myself and Robert and the Primero team, we do have, of course, our colleagues who do Primero support in the region. So we have Mohan there who is doing a lot of support on this. And we also have disability inclusion specialist support in the region. This is really valuable for locally relevant expertise, faster responses across time zones, and also to be able to decentralize for long-term sustainability so that the implementation can have itself up and running. That was a really quick overview, but I wanted to make sure we could get it in there while a lot of people are still here. Of course, there's really some great potential for including children with disabilities in casework and really furthering the data that is available, because that is something that is really missing for children with disabilities, especially in the area of child protection. So this has quite a lot to contribute, and we're really excited about rolling it out this year. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Lucy, for that. And thank you. We always feel guilty for the people that come at the end of the agenda and have to rush through everything. It's really exciting work. I like to say, I think we have an opportunity to move the needle here with this. And I want you guys to keep your eyes on this, talk within your country offices and with your partners, and try to generate interest in this, because it is something that together I think we can deliver. We can deliver at high quality, and we can really start to make an impact in this space and have better data for children with disabilities. Thank you very much, Lucy. If there are any questions, please get them into the chat in the next few seconds, because we are going to try to wrap up right away. We're over time. I promise next in May, in the May edition, I'll do a better job of time management, but we just had such good stuff happening that I felt bad rushing it. Next steps are that I put this date in the calendar because it's better to plan early. It's better to give people time and drum up interest in these webinars. The invitation is open for you to contribute ideas, submissions, but also, queries like how can I do this? What can we do to improve? We want to have for our next data challenge the winners from the 2024 edition in the group, and we want them to pick the product feature that they're interested in. We did say for AOB that we were going to talk about 2 other initiatives. We're not going to have time for those today. So I really appreciate you guys joining. This information will all be the recording, the materials, the menu of value-added services. Each of the decks is all going to be available on the microsite, which we'll share and circulate with the feedback. So I don't see anything coming into the chat. We're 8 minutes over, and I want to respect your time as much as possible. So I'm going to say thanks to everybody who presented, solidarity, and we look forward to seeing you at the next data challenge. Thank you.